name is Buba. For those that don't know me, I'm assuming Kelly and Paul. I'm a heart failure patient. I'm also on a transplant list. I'm currently living with the LVAD. And my story is similar to many other heart failure patients in the way that, overnight you find out that you have something. In my case, it turns out that it was congenital. But luckily we're doing well, and we even have twins that were born after my big LVAD operation. So life has been going all right, and we figure as we go forward, we'll try to give more meaning to our stories, and also try to see how we can help help this other people feel better or deal better with the heart disease. So one of those elements is today's call is in response to one of those elements, in the sense that when you find out your diagnosis, your first steps is to go to Google. But like in my case, I'm not a doctor, but I go to Google, and you hear about all these medical terms that don't really make sense. And then, on top of that, you want to understand things like life expectancy. What is it like to live with this condition? But those answers are not there. So initially, in my case, I just started sharing the news. Everybody was asking me, how you doing, what's happening. And as you can hear by my accent, I'm not from here, so a lot of people were abroad. And we started doing that on the blog. And as the blog evolved, we figured it was important to really not only talk about the condition or the relationship with the doctors, but also life as it is for a heart failure patient, which I think over time has been evolving. Usually when people hear about heart failure, they already picture you in the hospital or old age. In my case, everybody kept asking, why are you so young? I'm like, well, you should have told her to heart disease, not me. But yeah, so that's why we're here today, and I reach out to a few people online, a few profiles that I've seen mostly through Instagram and Facebook. And my friend Catalina helped with that, and she's here today. So thanks a lot, Catalina. And then the first to respond was Melany, who decided was happy to share her story. And I remember I had a first conversation with her was I think about 30 minutes, and we could have gone on forever. So I was like, hey, let me save this for the rest of the group. So I'm also gonna get to know her a little bit as yourself, and then a bit more about the logistic. I was thinking in the chat will be open, so feel free to chat and ask questions as we go. And then if there's something you'd like for her to bring up or not, you can let me know also. And then, so we'll keep an eye on that. And but it's just gonna be a conversation. So if something is not clear, feel free to reach out. So Melany, before we start, which are some of the names that you recognize? And then I guess after that you can introduce yourself to myself, I guess, and to everybody else. And welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice of you to be interviewing people that are actually suffering through what you're suffering through, because when you talk to doctors, they have a very different perspective. But right away after I got diagnosed, COVID had just hit. There was no support group. There was no one to talk to. So I went online, and there was a Facebook group. It's called Congestive Heart Failure Group. And you realize everyone asks the same question. What does this medicine do? How long am I going to live? Am I going to die? And I thought it was a good resource. But the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I think there's so much more out there. There's so many positive things that need to be said and shared. And if you do, like you said, Google, you feel like you're going to die for sure. I think there was a study back in the 80s that talked about life expectancy once you get the diagnosis. And I was convinced after I Googled it, I was dead within 5 years. That is not the case, people. It's far from it. We've made so many advancements with the medications, with cardiac rehab, with altering your diet and lowering your sodium intake. Just countless things that have made a difference. Like I have a biventricular pacemaker. Everyone that has heart failure has a different diagnosis, a different type of pacemaker. But mine is with an ICD, and my electrical system in my heart doesn't pump properly. So the pacemaker is pumping my heart for me 99.9% of the time. And it's important when you're in heart failure to understand certain terminology. Obviously, ejection fraction is the one that everybody globs onto because that's the number that dictates how well your heart is pumping blood through your body. When I got diagnosed, I was at 18%, and that was back in March. And as of October, it's gone up to 50. And I credit that to the medication and to the biventricular pacemaker primarily. But I do want to take a step back and just say that when I first got diagnosed, I find humor in everything. I found a lot of humor when I was in the hospital. I had fun with my nurses. One of them came in and said, "Let's throw your underwear all over the room and look like you had a party so that when people come in, they want to know what's going on." I thought it was funny. But I think it was the second day in the hospital. Most people get diagnosed because they can't breathe. They've got fluid filling up in their lungs. So the first treatment is LASIK. They want to take the fluid out of your lungs so that you can breathe. But they ended up giving me too much LASIK. And the nurse said, "Do you want to go take a shower?" I said, "Of course." I went in the shower. Then I passed out, but I could feel my blood pressure just draining down to nothing. So I thought, this might be it. I might be dying. And the next thing you know, I wake up in a room and it's white and bright. And Betty White is standing there offering me a peanut butter ice cream cone. And I thought, okay, if I have died, this isn't so bad. But they revived me, they brought me back, and I just laid there in bed thinking, that's hilarious. Who better to greet you if you die from heart failure than Betty White, right? But in the hospital, you're overwhelmed because there's so much to process. And even the doctors that were treating me didn't fully understand it. And I tell everybody, every person that came in the room had a different name for it. They were calling it cardiomyopathy, HFrEF, left bundle branch block, congestive heart failure. The term heart attack had been thrown in there. So my sister, who's a registered nurse practitioner, flew in the second day. And when she walked in the room, she said, "What's the diagnosis? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Everything." I've got it all. But certainly you need a good advocate, a caretaker, somebody to help you navigate things. I had a piece of paper and a pencil and I was writing it down and I didn't do it justice. I don't know if Laura's on the call with us yet, but having somebody that's your caretaker that has a medical background is just priceless. And for any of you that have gone through it, if you have a spouse or a friend that's somebody trying to support you, it's overwhelming for them as well because they're concerned, obviously, about your health, your life expectancy, helping you get through all the steps. So I think I was released on the 5th day, and when I got home from the hospital, my sister Laura had taken out everything in my pantry, every food item, every spice, and she put them all over my island and labeled them with colorful notes. And it would say things like, "Hell no," or "If you eat this, I'll kill you." And what were you thinking? So you have to revamp your whole diet, right? But Laura was there to help me research the doctors, pick the best cardiologist, manage the medication, question what the doctors were doing. And I can't thank her enough. I don't know what I would do without her. I'm sure you had the same thing, Google, with your wife, right?
Nah, she was. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we had a similar experience, and she likes to get things done, and I like to get things done. So it's a question of now, who takes the lead or not, and so that was like the communication was a bigger challenge for us, but different stages. We went through. When I was diagnosed, it was I had gotten flu symptoms, and it was like a Saturday afternoon. I was like, you know what, I need to go to the ER, and we've been dating maybe for about, I'll say, 9 months. We had just moved in together. So she's like, "Wait, what is this guy taking my weekend for?" So she was more worried about the weekend, and I was like, "Okay, this is just a flu. We're gonna come back home soon." And then next thing we know, it's heart failure. And then yeah, everything kind of stops, and we were still figuring it out what loving each other means to, like, okay, now we gotta make these big decisions. And for me, I was just like, I didn't want to hear anything. I just wanted to um, I don't know. I just wanted to disappear. And for her, she's like, "What does this number mean? What is ejection fraction? What is this and that? What's the normal range?" I'm like, "I'm dying." So she was really there, and even when I was like didn't want to, I don't know, do anything, she was there. And when I was moody, she was there. And then it evolved over time up to when I would be doing better, and then up to transplant, the transplant diagnosis. So we went through a kind of a roller coaster. um, but yeah, I'll come back to that also. For I guess for the group, maybe want to hear what are some of the symptoms that you got, and what made you go to the ER or to the hospital, and how did you get there? Like somebody take you, or you just went by yourself, and what brought you to the hospital that day?
Well, I personally tried to lay down and go to bed just like a normal night. And no matter how many attempts I made, I just kept choking and coughing. And I think finally, 3 or 4 hours into it, I decided to go get my boyfriend and make a trip to the ER. But it's interesting because by the time I decided to grab him, I couldn't get up the stairs. I kind of had to crawl and take small steps. And then even when I got into the bedroom, I sat there and I thought, is this in your head? Are you making it up? And I finally did wake him up, and my oxygen was so low, I don't remember anything after that. But I think not being able to breathe is a common precipitant to getting the diagnosis. And I just want to throw in one other thing that you guys might find interesting is the day before I went to the emergency room, I met with the head cardiologist at a local hospital who looked at a quick EKG and the lab results and said, I don't see anything. You may have some mild left bundle branch block, but let's schedule a test and get back together in a few months.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I will never see that man again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think finding the right timing is very important, I think, and finding the right doctor. Even sometimes could just be a personality match. I had some doctors that I was like, well, you're telling me the wrong thing. I remember the first doctor that diagnosed me, and this was in South Africa. Um, so my wife wanted to get a second opinion, and I just wanted to know what's happening in the field. So I wasn't trying to get a second opinion, but I went to ask my GP, and he was like, "Well, this guy is like top two cardiologist in the country." But what I liked about him, he was just always calm. It was like, you know what, don't worry, you're gonna be fine. And we brought all the statistics that we saw on Google. It was just like, don't worry about any of that. And over time, we worked well together. And 6 months, 6 weeks into it, I was starting to the symptoms were going away already. But fast forward, I remember in Senegal, I had my own cardiologist, but I also had when I went to the ER one time, there was another cardiologist that came, and he was trying to make me understand, be like, "Oh, you're a young man," and I was probably 20, I think I was 28, 29. He's like, "But your heart is like that of a 60-year-old man. You should slow down and take life slowly and stuff." And my mom was with me that day, and I just looked at my mom like, this guy is a fool, right? So that matching is important. And we came to the Brigham, where actually in Sacramento, Dr. Shu, I remember I saw a few doctor, and actually I went to the hospital for a week, and similar to your case, they were like, you're fine, you can go home. But after a month, my heart wasn't any better. And during that month, I went to the ER twice, and then they sent me back home with some GI. I remember it was 3rd of July and 4th of July. I went to the hospital. But when you walk in and you like, I was always active. So I walked in the hospital, and I looked fine, and I was talking, and they're like, well, maybe this guy is just some minor symptoms. So because we try to use, I guess, correlation, and we try to use, previous example, they look at you and they're like, oh, you're fine. But luckily on the fourth time, I told the team, I'm like, I called the dispatching lady. I need a cardiologist. I don't want to talk to anybody else. I need somebody who knows heart. And I remember they sent me, he was an internalist, I think, or hospitalist. He just came and I was just laughing. I was like, you know what? I'm not talking to any of you. Finally, the cardiologist came, Dr. Shui went inside my heart. He's like, well, your heart is beating your heart is at half capacity. Your EF was 11, which is, EF is the ejection fraction. I think for those who don't know, on normal is 55 to 70. That's like the normal um, rate, and the range that, basically how much is your heart pumping, how much blood is how effective is your blood at pumping the blood to your heart at pumping the blood to the rest of your body. So in my case it was like 11, and which is normally you don't see people walking to the hospital with those kind of states. And then yeah, they put me under, but his goal was simple. He was like, I need you to get out to be active, I need to fix you to help you go. So we were on the same kind of wavelength. And then when one treatment didn't work, it will swap it easily. And the same with the Brigham here, where um, Wendy will be laughing, but my one cardiologist is a marathon runner, and I'm just don't know how you're a cardiologist and you run, but essentially he runs every day at 4 a.m. So we kind of have this overachiever um, relationship in common, I guess. And they tease me with that. But having the right team is great, and also the right experience, because some of them can see you and be like, "Well, this is what you have." In other places, they have to go around, and I think in general, most people, but even doctors, don't like to say, "I don't know," and that can make it worse. So I'm glad that you're not gonna see him again. He won't take it personal, I'm sure. What was your boyfriend and all of that? What was he? How was he reacting, and what was happening to him? Was he worried also, or what was happening with him?
We'd only been dating for a year. We lived together for 6 months. And the day after the diagnosis, when I got my oxygen back up and actually remember conversations, I looked at him and said, if you want to leave, I won't hold it against you. And he was really sweet. He didn't hesitate, didn't skip a beat. And he said, no, I'm in it for the long run. I love you. I don't know what I'd do without you. And I was just feeling so blessed, because the more people you have to support and help you, the better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But he's been fantastic.
That's amazing. Do you tell him that often?
I do. I thank him a lot. I don't want to take him for granted, but I feel like I kind of leveled the playing field because he got COVID in November, and I waited on him hand and foot.
How was that? So fast forward, you mentioned your sister coming into the hospital. How long was that hospital stay before you left?
I stayed for a week, and I started out at a country hospital. And I guess I'm naive. I haven't spent a lot of time in the hospital, but I figured all hospitals have the same providers. That's not true. They looked at me and said, this exceeds our capacity. So they transferred me to a second hospital. And within 2 more days, they transferred me to a bigger hospital. And having the best providers is important, but don't you empathize with people that are out in a rural area that don't have access to the top doctors? I happen to live in a suburb of Milwaukee, so I can commute into the city and use one of the better hospitals. But I think that standing up for yourself, trying to find a good doctor, obviously makes a big difference in the communication and the quality of care. The first 2 hospitals that I went to tried to use certain protocols with certain medications, but by the time I got to the top hospital, they said, we're going to try something different, and this is why. This is why you shouldn't be on this medication, and this is why we're going to start you on this one. I wanted to mention too, right after I got diagnosed, I posted something on Facebook, and the immediate question from everybody, besides, I'm so sorry you're going through this, was how do I get screened? How do I get tested? Could I possibly have this? And you realize after you've been diagnosed, there's a simple blood test called a pro-BNP. And when you're in heart failure, your heart isn't pumping enough blood, so it's backing up a little bit into your kidneys, and your kidneys throwing off a protein. So if you do a pro-BNP blood test and that number's elevated, it's one piece of the puzzle. It's an indicator. And I don't know if it would be a good idea for doctors to do it with a physical, but it might not be a bad idea either, because everyone I know got diagnosed far into the point at which the symptoms have been going on. Nobody got diagnosed early.
Mhm.
But with the pro-BNP blood test and maybe an X-ray of the lungs, possibly an ultrasound or echocardiogram of the heart, it's very easy to diagnose. You don't have to get an MRI. You don't have to get the more expensive tests done. But early detection would be great. But it's a shame that they don't have any way to do that in a physical. I got the EKG every physical and it never showed anything.
Yeah.
Our hearts can look normal, they can appear like they're beating normal, but you can feel an irregular or a hard heartbeat. But of course, no doctor and EKG is around when that happens. You're just stuck sitting there going, okay, that's not normal, that doesn't feel good. And then you just wait and it resets itself.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think it'll be interesting to understand how the medical world is improving the protocol, I guess the screening methods, and also how they're communicating between themselves. Obviously, the cardiologist might be specialized, but then at the same time, your first contact is your primary or some local doctor. So it would be important to understand that. I'd like to, I see Laura join, so before we get to her, I'd like to hear from you in terms of what was life like before your diagnosis. What were your activities, and it looked like you were very active before that, but what were your hobbies, and what was your life before the diagnosis?
I stay pretty active. We live on a lake, so we like to go out in the water and swim. I also love to travel anywhere near water. I'm a Pisces. But I was always active, working out, walking every morning, doing simple strengthening exercises, sometimes weights. And I would say I stayed active, maybe not to the extent that you did. I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but definitely not a couch potato.
Yeah.
I love to socialize, but that all came to a crashing halt. And the year before the diagnosis, I kept thinking, why are you so lazy? Why do you feel lazy? Why don't you have more energy? And 3 days before the diagnosis, I actually forced myself to go for a run. That was funny.
Yeah.
It was more stopping to catch my breath than it was actually running.
Yeah, I remember in my case, I was running a boot camp, and I remember I was like, "Hey guys, let's go run," and I couldn't keep up, and I was like, "Okay, something is wrong. I cannot be unfit over a week. Like maybe something's wrong." Then, luckily, I didn't force it, but that was probably one of the signs. But you don't know. In hindsight, do you think there were signs before, like there were signs earlier in your life that probably kind of like if you look back and what are the dots that you can connect along the way, it'd be like, okay, maybe this was a sign that I missed, or maybe the doctors missed.
Absolutely. I had had a colonoscopy the year before, and they hook you up to an EKG, and they identified the bundle branch block, or at the time they thought that's what it was. And they said you should go consult with the cardiologist. And at that time, I had to see my general doctor for a physical, and she said, I looked at the EKG, everything looks normal to me. I really don't think you need to go. Do you want to go? And I trusted her opinion. I said no. But had I gone, I would have gotten the diagnosis a year early and probably would have had a higher ejection fraction and wouldn't have been able to recover more. I did go from 18 to 50, so I'm back in somewhat of a normal range. And when your ejection fraction goes up, you get more energy, your oxygenation is better. You can kind of go back to being independent functioning and resume some sense of normalcy. But I do tell people it doesn't mean that I'm not still in heart failure. There is no recovery from it. I've got the drugs and the pacemaker that are keeping me going.
Yeah.
And by the way, my son said it's super cool that I'm part cyborg. He thinks that's awesome.
It looks cool from the outside, I tell you.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Wendy, and I don't want to say much, but Wendy is also a heart patient, so hopefully, actually, one day she's gonna be on the call. I don't think she has a choice, but Wendy would like to know what was the cause, or what did it determine what was the cause of your heart failure at the time?
They were never able to figure it out. But in the first week in the hospital, every doctor that would walk in the room kept saying over and over again, did you abuse cocaine? I've never used illegal drugs in my life, but after the 10th question, I finally said, if it makes you happy, I'll say I did, but I didn't. And I think they were just frustrated because they went through all the tests and they couldn't find anything. And it's surprising the range and litany
Yeah,
of causes. I mean, from pregnancy to tick bites to drug abuse, and then certainly in your case, a congenital defect.
yeah,
But for me, they never figured it out. I do have a type of muscular dystrophy I inherited from my dad, and they thought that may be a component, but
mhm,
it's just not typical for that type. So in the end, they decided we don't know. We're just going to go ahead and focus on the treatment. But it would be interesting to know because I think that would be an indicator of how long I've been dealing with it.
yeah. And was there any? Did they do any genetic testing or anything along those lines?
No.
Yeah. So we have Laura here, and I couldn't wait to get her perspective. Um, and before I ask Laura, how many siblings you have, Melanie?
I've got two. I've got an older sister and younger sister, and I'm the troublemaker in the middle.
In the middle. And where does Laura fit in?
She's 5 years younger and she's got her master's degree in nursing. And unfortunately, she carries the burden of being the family advocate for any of our medical issues. And we've had a lot. I don't know how I can ever thank her enough or reciprocate, but she is a godsend.
Yeah. Was it always like that? Like baby sisters? I know my young brothers are like, even now I see my son and his younger brothers. It's not always, So what was it like growing up?
Oh no, I was mean to her. She's
Uh,
laughing right now. I was mean. She got all the attention. Look at those cartoon eyes. She was just like a cute Cupid doll baby. People leave the room and I'd pretend that she didn't exist. And she'd be going, Melanie, Melanie. And I just look around like she wasn't even there. I was so mean.
oh my
But
God.
I spent my adulthood apologizing. I blame it on mom, Laura. It's
Yeah,
mom's fault.
I blame the parents. I always blame the parents. In my case, my brother he's less than 2 years younger than me, and I just felt like he took the shine. And then we have another brother, and I just never liked him. I love him, but I'm like, he's always in the way. So I can relate to you, and I don't really feel sorry for Laura much, but I understand you. And I said to her, "Hi, Laura. We try not to say too much bad things about you, and she's sorry. I hope you accept the apologies, but we can work on the gift and whatever you need for peace offering. Um, how are you? How's being a nurse and the sister of a heart failure patient? Is that why
Hi,
you're a
I'm
nurse?
sorry for jumping in here late, and I'm sorry that I missed the first half of the conversation. You would think that after teaching on Zoom for 2 years that I would have it mastered, but I don't. So, and yes, of course, I forgive Melanie. I forgave her before she, as soon as she did it. She was my big sister, and I've always looked up to her. And now with this diagnosis, I don't only look up to her, but she's just such a role model to me. The way that she has just handled this and conquered this heart failure diagnosis. Like, I've never seen somebody be so positive in the light of something that is, quite challenging. And I don't say that lightly. I've taken care of a lot of patients with heart failure. And I think that attitude and just that frame of mind, it really does help a lot. You have to stay positive. Again, I'm sorry that I missed the first part.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. You didn't miss much. You already know half of it. No, but we were talking about life before, and we touched on the diagnostic. I guess at this point we can maybe hear a little bit from your perspective in terms of um, I don't know how you dissociate between being a nurse and a sister, but like, what is it like to be the caregiver and the caretaker at the same time?
You can't really separate out the roles, but I do go full on nurse mode whenever one of my family members is sick, and you have to, because nurses right now are just under so much pressure, and although they mean well and they want to advocate for their patients, unless you see them frequently, you really can't advocate. I mean, so somebody needs to be there to advocate for heart failure patients from the beginning. Because, it starts like with my sister, a lot of patients are diagnosed when they're in severe pulmonary edema, like flash pulmonary edema, and it's life-threatening. But that's, in the emergency situation. And so you leave there, and then what? Who's advocating for you?
Yeah.
So Melany has just been always so supportive of me, and I would do anything for my family. And whether that means flying across country during a pandemic, no problem. And she would do the same for me if she could. I think the reason why I jumped in so quickly was because of the severe numbers that she had in the beginning. And I knew that if everything wasn't done perfectly, it could go the wrong way very fast. So with an ejection fraction of 18% and the BNP that she had initially over 5,000 just terrified me.
Yeah.
So I've seen people, not survive in the 700s, 800s. To me is severe. When I saw 5,000, I lost my breath. So I knew something.
And for context, I think the normal range is it 180, less than 180 or less than 280, somewhere
Well,
there.
it depends on, if you're doing the NT or, the pro BNP. Typically the one that we do just in the emergency setting, we consider under 100 normal, but I think it varies by lab. So don't quote me on that. But certainly anything over 1,000 is, really severe heart failure. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, and you actually just gave me one more question. But you mentioned her attitude and being positive, which is, I think, I mean, I tell people you just have to do what you have to do as a patient, right? And sometimes, I think, especially with the coronavirus, one thing I told people is like the crisis hits you where you are. Like, so if you already have a positive attitude and you self motivating, when the crisis comes, it's easier to manage than, okay, this is when I have to develop these things. So it seems like this is something that's been there all the time, and in your case it's probably similar. But how do you keep calm in this situation? How do you keep like your composure, so that you don't shout at the doctors or even at her for not complying? Like, what's your tactic, or how do you manage that?
Wait, let me just step in for a second and say you're assuming she doesn't yell at the doctors. Laura has been working in hospitals and medical settings for a long time. And if she doesn't agree, she is going to speak up and speak loudly. So go ahead, Laura.
I think the point is that you don't yell, because that's not going to accomplish anything. But I think, having been yelled at and spit on in emergency rooms, there's a more effective way of a communication. Like when you have that breakdown and you feel like you're not being heard as the sister, your reaction is to want to yell.
Yeah.
As a nurse, understanding that that's not going to get you anywhere, and it's actually probably going to have the care providers and nurses want to avoid coming into that room, you have to stay calm and respectful and realize that you're not the expert. I'm not the expert. Have I had a lot of patients with heart failure? Yes. I'm still not the expert. I don't sit there and read all the studies that come out. I don't have a medical degree. So it is about being respectful, but also making sure that they understand the picture of what's going on. So my big thing was every time Melany was moved from the ER to another hospital, a few pieces of the story were left behind, like big key pieces. For example, with the first dose of an ACE inhibitor like lisinopril, you can have first dose hypotension where it drops your blood pressure. And in that case, they gave it to her and then allowed her to go shower, which is fine if somebody's standing there but not understanding that that can bottom out your blood pressure. She had a syncopal episode in the shower. She was so stressed at that time, she didn't really remember. So then they transferred her to another hospital and that didn't get passed along. So then they started increasing the dose before knowing. So it's those little types of things that I wanted to be there to relay. And so for me, it's not as much about yelling and saying, we're not getting this done. It's, I've been with her. I know everything that's happened. I've written it down. Please listen to me.
Yeah.
I know that you're seeing this one moment in time when you come in to assess her, but I've been watching that monitor all day, and I'm telling you that her QRS complex in the EKG was flipping back and forth and back and forth. And it's little things like that for me.
Yeah,
I told them about the food labels too, Laura.
Oh,
They
God.
like- Laura's so sweet though and angelic. You couldn't have a better nurse, but when her voice gets really calm and super sweet, she's at the edge of blowing. Don't let her fool you. If they mess up, she will take charge if needed. I told him about Betty White too, Laura. I told him how I went into the White Light and she offered me peanut butter ice cream. And when I came around, I made Tim go get me peanut butter ice cream. Because if I'm dying, that's my last meal. But I was in the hospital too before Laura got there. One of my best friends drove in and spent the night. And at some point, I got up to go to the bathroom and she took a picture of me from behind where the gown is, they don't cover you. The gown is slit open. You can full on see my arse. And she texted me a picture and she said, we're going to kick heart failure in the arse. So what did I do? I sent it to my friends. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. That's amazing. I remember in the Sacramento, and also you were tall, right? So it's not even like it covers a lot. So I just wanted to walk, and they wouldn't give me a chance. So I just started walking, but I didn't know like much was showing. So I see the guy running to give me one on the back. Yeah, but like at that point, I'm like, you already. I don't care. I mean, you already seen everything. You've seen me in many positions. So no, that's funny. Talking about food, we got a question about what kind of diet are you on right now? It's yeah. So what are some of the changes, specific changes you made? I know you talked about already the labeling protocol and the process that you went through, but what are some of the restrictions right now that you follow, whether it's salt or liquid intake?
Immediately when I left the hospital, they said no more than 1.5 liters of water a day and less than 1,500 milligrams of salt. And you learn pretty quickly that when you grocery shop, you don't go up and down the aisles where the processed food is. You go on the periphery. You go where the vegetables and the fruits and the fresh meats are. And when I got out of the hospital, Laura did clean out the pantry and the fridge and got rid of every high sodium item, which my boyfriend wasn't super happy about, but he ended up finding a hiding place to put his chips. But she is a phenomenal cook and she bought the healthiest stuff. And by the time she left a couple weeks in, she had created a low sodium cookbook for me. And there are good low sodium cookbooks out there, but a lot of the ingredients you have to find and buy at a specialty health store. And there are some online that sell low sodium products.
Yeah.
But I've been a little bit more lax because as your ejection fraction comes up and you're not retaining as much fluid, you can tolerate a little bit more sodium. So I'd say I'm closer to 2,000 milligrams, or wait, is it 2,000 milligrams? Yeah, which is what, 2 teaspoons, Laura?
I think she's judging you right now.
I don't add salt to anything, and I won't turn down a bite of bacon, but there's some things that I consider the worst of the worst. You can't eat sliced meat, canned soup, bratwurst, bacon. It's a little, it takes some time to get used to it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we do have a lot of low sodium options, including spaghetti sauce. You don't have to make everything from scratch. You still have to be careful and read the labels because even if it says low sodium, it may not be what you deem to be low sodium.
Yeah.
And you can still have plenty of flavor. You quickly realize that Mrs. Dash has 34 different flavors. It's not just the regular Mrs. Dash. They got fiesta and lime and steak and chicken.
And they have special ones, I think in Japan, in some places like outside that they don't even have here, I heard. So they're everywhere, and it's amazing how how much options are there. We don't even kind of see it.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think a lot of patients with heart failure also are on a certain cocktail of medications that kind of mess with your electrolytes. And a lot of people don't understand that you need to watch your potassium very closely. And you have sodium restrictions, but a lot of the salt replacements have potassium in them.
Yes.
So for example, if you're on an ACE inhibitor like lisinopril and then a diuretic like spironolactone that both raise your potassium, it can be very dangerous if you then add salt substitutes. I would say for anybody just starting to go to the American Heart Association, go to the website, and they have amazing resources there on exactly, great recipes that you can use, what kinds of substitutes you can't use. When in doubt, always go fresh. Grow your own herbs. There's nothing in this world to me that smells better, well, aside from campfires, but fresh cilantro. I just get my face all in there at the grocery store. I'm like, I love that smell so much, but enjoy the food. Yeah. Create that new relationship with food instead of going to what's easy. I would say.
I like that part, new relationship with food. And I think at some point it becomes like a new relationship with life itself. Like in my case, when I got out of the hospital or when I was diagnosed, I had to it's like an adaptation to the world, and you see the world differently, of course, and you also realize that there's a certain level of disability that you have at it now, and you realize, in my case, I started seeing the world like from the disabled point of view, which before I don't think I was aware of, but not necessarily very mindful of it. So I wanted to know how was the world to you direct, like when you got out, like now you're facing society that don't know about heart failure, but also there's a level of fear towards mortality, and there's also the fact that she has heart failure now, maybe she's not good for this or for that. So how was coming back to the real world like for you, and how did you adjust to your condition and living outside with everything that you were carrying, I guess, in terms of heart failure?
Well, I got released from the hospital right when COVID started to make the media, and people were, starting to realize this pandemic is going to change everybody's life. When Laura and I left the hospital, I think it was March 3rd. So right at the start. And unfortunately, that meant because of the lack of information, the confusion about the disease, was that all of my care was postponed. Normally, you go in and meet with an electrophysiologist. They start you with a nutritionist, a therapist, and you also start cardiac rehab. Cardiac rehab for me was a phone appointment every week. It wasn't about exercise. It was just a conversation about we're looking forward to the point at which we can get you in.
Yeah.
And that didn't start for 3 months. So it was a rough transition, but obviously when you get diagnosed, you have no energy, you're just exhausted. It was kind of a relief to be able to say it's okay to stay inside and lay on the couch and not do much. And we're still dealing with that. We still have those restrictions. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm going out on a date when I go to cardiac rehab. Like I get to talk to people and see people. This is fantastic.
Yeah. I think cardiac rehab was the very was a turning point for me. And but here I'm in Boston, so I used to. That was one time to get out of the house, so I did it like 3 times a week. And I'll get out, go take the train, and then go to the place, and you see other people, like you say. But that was before COVID, so I think during COVID it's a bit tricky because now you have masks on and you don't know when people are smiling or not. So, but now, do you have like a routine for sports or something? Like, do you have like a new sport routine or physical activity that you do regularly?
Yeah, post cardiac rehab, I decided that I was just going to walk a couple miles every day and do the strength training exercises that they gave me.
So, how many
With the
miles?
comorbidity of the heart failure and the muscular dystrophy, I can't do anything that's super aerobic, but I definitely stay active. And my philosophy is get out of bed in the morning, do not look in the mirror, put on some old nasty yoga pants and get out there and do it, get it over with. And of course, you don't have makeup on, you're not dressed nice, so all your neighbors stop as they're driving by to say hello. Then I come home, shower, get dressed, put on makeup, and no one sees me. Yeah, I get it out of the way.
Heart disco.
Yeah, there we go.
Because it's heart disco, Melanie has always loved dancing.
I
and
have
dance
I have the disco lights here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my philosophy was, why would anybody be content with a diagnosis with the name failure in it? You think, okay, I've got heart failure, that's death, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
So right away, when I saw my cardiologist and I joined the Facebook group, I said, guys, we need to come up with another name because this is so dire and negative. We need something better because truly, it isn't a death sentence. People
Yeah.
can live 20, 30, 40 years with or without a transplant. So I kind of did a survey on Facebook and I said, I'm leaning towards heart disco. But then depending on people's generation, they had different ideas. But I said, I like heart disco because we all have funky heartbeats, right? So the older generation were saying, oh, no, I want it to be heart jazz. And a couple of young people are like, no, let's call it hip hop heart disease. But regardless, I think we can do better than heart failure, right?
As long as that is not failure. I
Right,
think that,
or how to do it, but we need to get the message out there. My vote is heart disco.
and the name has to evolve. I think that I like that idea. We'll probably start a petition and then go to the American cardiologist convention next time. So I think what we can do right now, I think we'll probably see if anyone else would like to give a few words, and I'll probably call on you. And then I think everybody can be able to unmute themselves, but let me know if you struggle. I'll start with Kelly. I know we didn't quiz you, but I'd love to see if you had a question or maybe anything you'd like to say to Melany. And also
Hi.
introduce yourself. Yeah, thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hi, Melanie. I would say thank you for doing this. As I was listening, I was just thinking about how transferable a lot of this information is to other things that people deal with. Like, for instance, you were talking quite a bit about the self-advocacy and how important that is. And that was really striking to me and how that relates to a lot of different conditions. And I love what you say about the foods too, because what all of you said about the foods, because it seems that sometimes when we have to change our diet, the first thing is panic. You know, oh my God, I can't live on carrot sticks all my life is what, you know, people have sometimes said. And in this culture, we have such a relationship to food, right? We use it to celebrate, we use it to grieve. So when has to change, I think people sometimes can, you know, have some panic. But you're right, there's so many options out there. And I would say Melany is an awesome cook. So she's going to find she's going to find all the options. Maybe we'll do a heart disease cookbook.
Yeah, we're gonna work on a cooking class.
Yeah,
She'll give us a class next time.
So I appreciate that, you know, the things that are really transferable. The one thing I'd be curious to hear, you know, from both of you too, is that this is like a lot of other conditions, an invisible condition. So when you're out and about, family, friends, in public, anywhere, it's an invisible condition, and people don't necessarily immediately understand. And I would love your thoughts on managing, you know, friends and family and how to set the appropriate boundaries to take care of yourself, but also recognizing, hey, this is invisible. People don't really know what I'm juggling here.
Yeah. I'll let Melany go first.
Well, I think it's our job to educate everybody. You can stay silent and, you know, try and adjust what you're eating or what you're doing. But I think it's better to be vocal and educate and share information. And if there's something being served that I can't eat, I can always bring my own food. But all my friends have asked all the right questions. They're fully engaged. I haven't had to do a lot of education. It's more just been conversations. Although we haven't been able to spend time together because of COVID, but we could Zoom eat. And then I know it's low sodium. My family just suffers from the low sodium sometimes. I'm kind of used to it. But my son shot his first deer, and I'm sorry if that offends anybody. But we made a roast with the deer meat, and it was fantastic. But he was standing there chewing it, saying, well, it tastes like meat, but it's missing something. And I'm like, salt. You can add salt, it's fine. Laura tried to throw it away, but we kept the salt shaker.
Yeah, just not for you, but others can use it.
I think it's a two-way street, though. It's us wanting our friends to care and empathize, ask questions, engage, and educate themselves. But just, you know, feeling your support, love, it's amazing. But I also want to educate people as well. And that's why I wanted to do this. I mean, if we can intervene and help somebody get diagnosed sooner or promote heart-healthy lifestyles to reduce the risk to them, that's great. My boyfriend, Tim, sat down to eat summer sausage yesterday, and he took about a 5-inch slice, and it was a big sausage, and he was dicing it up. And I went and picked the label out of the garbage, and I said, that is a heart attack on your plate. You can have 2. The rest are going back in the fridge. I mentally add up sodium all day. No matter what I eat, I know the sodium content in every label. I don't know if you do that, but I'm always adding it up. I know when I hit 1,500. I can only go over it if it's something really, really good, like a candy bar ice cream.
Yeah,
which I know Laura wouldn't want me to eat, but I'm human.
No, I'm sure she'll be tolerant, but she has to keep, you know, a stern face on you, and she has to, you know, stay on you. In my case, I try more swing, but I try to just not eat salt at all, or add any salt. So that allows me to do those extra bits. And so that before some more logistic, I did set a time for 1 hour, 15 minutes. So we're going to go a little bit past the hour. But if anybody needs to jump off, please let me know. We're going to be here for a few more minutes. In my case, I think it was necessary to educate and share with special people around me, like especially with Desiree, because like you say, it's invisible. And so naturally, I'm very stoic, and I'm also always kind of maybe positive or reserved. So it's like not many in between. I'll be quiet. So with the heart condition, I had to be a bit more outspoken and maybe about what's happening, and then tell her, okay, what's going on, because she likes to help, and then I'll be kind of frustrating her because I'll say everything is fine, but then she can see not everything is fine. And at the same time, it was kind of an evolution over time where I also like to help people. I know the feeling that comes out of it. So it was important for me to, okay, tell people what's happening, and it just makes life easier overall also. And that was in a close circle, but then as you go publicly, yeah, it was always a shock when I tell people, okay, I have a heart condition. They either think you're lying or something else, and then in my case, they also don't think about happening to them in a way. So I tell people like it's important just to know, just to be aware and check yourself. In my case, I was very active, and then most people knew that, and they knew that I was active. But I was also, my mom is a doctor, so was always going to check myself to the hospital like every year I'll do my medical, but also my physical. But also I didn't wait for symptoms to get too big. It's like I didn't mind going to get checked to the doctor, and that's something that is not always very common. Beside the self-treatment part where because my mom tells me she's not my doctor, so at home she's not a doctor, and so I had to kind of, you become aware of these things. So I was always happy to share, and then as I got I like really sick, and sometimes I'll be physically tired or I won't be in a mood. I had to start telling people, and also just to a level of awareness. But I think the big test came when I got my. I'm showing these pumps. So I have a pump inside my heart right now. It's called the LVAD. So left ventricular assist. So it's assisting my heartbeat and then supply the body to the rest of my body. And the version I have comes with these batteries that are like I think 1.5 pounds each, and I have to kind of hoist them around me. So it's a big of a trouble for a lot of people in terms of how they dress and how they go outside. In my case, I just had something that looks like gun holsters that I walked around with, and then that was, people will be like, "Oh, what's this?" At first, they look at you and they're like, "Oh, are these guns?" And then, but then usually I have a clean shave, and nobody really walks around with two guns and stuff. And then they see the wire, and then you sometimes you hear them speak next to each other. And to me, that was my opportunity to like those that want to know, I'll tell them, and sometimes I just tell them publicly. And initially, though, it was tricky because I remember when I wanted to go. So I had my business in Senegal, and I came to here, and I ended up being sick in California. I moved to Boston, so I had to switch my life around. And then I remember I was job hunting, and my first thing in the job was job interview will be like, "Hi," and I'll tell them about my heart condition, which I think it was good and bad, but like I was trying to be honest, but then I could be scary to them. But also the picture of that they have of heart failure was, like Melany said many times, is somebody dying or a big risk for them, even though they cannot deny me because of that reason, because of that, but it was kind of scary. So I had to even switch the way I was telling the story and everything. So it's a continuous journey, but I think that's also one more thing that we're doing now. And, with these videos and the blogging and sharing on Facebook and on Instagram, but also just telling people that, it's not the end of the world, and as science evolve, we'll kind of detect this condition sooner, hopefully. But then also we have to live with this longer. And, after my operation, my open heart surgery, I think a year into it, my two kids we found out that we were pregnant with the kids. And then there were twins. And then you're like, okay, heart disease can wait. But even with the first one, I just woke up one day and I was like, hey, Daisy, I think you're pregnant. And she's like, are you crazy? And it was like out of nowhere. And she's here to confirm it. But it was like, I think we were like 2 weeks pregnant at that moment. And I just had a feeling. But then here I am dealing with heart failure a year into it to the date. And next thing, somebody's pregnant. And yeah, everything kind of switched up. And at that point, I was like, I'm not scared of anything again. And those moments add up, and people are like, yeah, you're never scared, you're always positive. But I'm like, I don't have a time for it. I have these 3 boys that don't care if you're sick or not. They'll be nice. They'll know that you're sick, but they come and play, hey, get up, daddy, let's go play. I gotta keep up. So all of those things add up, and then we're able to impact others and inspire others and everything. So yeah. I'll move on to Wendy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to jump in. I think one of the things that, along with what both Kelly and Buba have said in terms of it being a it's an invisible illness, and expressing things to your friends. I think one of the things with heart failure too is that you have good days and you have bad days. And so your friends will see you on a good day when you're walking and you're doing what they're doing and you're able to keep up the pace, and, and your kids see you and your family sees you and everything. And then they see you on another day and you look completely the same. Nothing outwardly has changed, but suddenly you can't do that walk to them. It's a struggle to walk to the end of the driveway. And so it's not just, it's a constant education, I think. So even our best friends, they see you looking the same way all the time, but inside you're not feeling the same way all the time. And so, I think that that's something that it's a constant conversation we have to have with people. And I think it's a conversation that we also have to force ourselves to have with our doctors, because it's so easy to go into the doctor's office on a good day and say, oh yeah, I'm feeling fine.
Yeah.
But I think we do need to be as honest as we can with ourselves, with our friends, with our doctors, and be able to say, I'm okay today, but yesterday was this, or I'm okay today, or I'm not okay today. This is a bad day for me, but yesterday was a good day. So, we look the same, but I think every day can be very different with heart failure.
Well said.
Yeah. Wendy is one of the very active people in the space, I guess, in terms of advocacy, but also patient education. She actually, I guess, big inspiration of mine, but also got me to, I think we met about a conference and she got me to share my story there. And like, we've been friends since, so
Ever since.
It's been quite a journey, and we have the same doctors. But to a point, yeah, you have to, it's a long-term journey, and it's like a chronic illness. So it's more than just get some medication, go back home. It's a lot of negotiation, and I put a lot of pressure on my team. I'm like, well, I'm gonna run. You guys figure out how I'm gonna do it, but I'm running, and you guys figure out what would be the reason. And they're like, oh, actually, you can run. I'm like, well, you told me 9 months ago I couldn't run, but now they see the evolution and they know that I'm careful, so we can make those negotiations. And because it's not an exact science, and I think that's also thinking. And so not only will be educating people, but even the medical world will also learn. And I'm hoping also that through these storytelling, other people will decide to be specialists in cardiology. We need more, I think, investment in terms of, I guess, funds in the research and the medical personnel itself. I don't know if we have enough cardiologists or enough cardiologists that are specialized in this condition. So all of those, I think everything kind of should be leading towards us. So we're hoping that somehow it will get to them, and some of them will receive it well. So as a collective, we'll get there.
I was going to say, that's another thing that, if I can jump in there, I think it used to be that the cardiologist was the specialist, but now there are so many specialists within cardiology. So don't assume if you're seeing a cardiologist that you are going to see someone who knows about your specific cardiology issue, because there are the general cardiologists, and then there are specialists who deal with just heart failure or just cardiomyopathy or just a certain type of cardiomyopathy. And so you might say, oh yeah, I have my appointment with a cardiologist, but that still might not be the best person for you to see. So make sure you're constantly advocating. And if there's something that something doesn't sit right, or, they're recommending something that you've heard might not be a good idea, advocate and make sure you're finding the right person.
Can I also say,
Yes,
on
Laura.
top of that is a great point, Wendy. And I also want to just tell people that one opinion is not definite. If you feel like you are not being heard or something just doesn't make sense, do not ever hesitate to get a second opinion. And I know that any good provider out there would agree and be more than happy to send the records to another provider, just to double check. I myself, with my heart failure, have seen probably 6 different cardiologists in 3 states, and every single one of them has said different things, and that is fine. That is why I go to get other opinions,
Right. And if they're not willing to give you a second opinion or to let you get a second opinion, that's a reason to find a new doctor, because sometimes their ego gets in the way. And you don't want a doctor to think of their ego before they think of you as a person with a condition.
And that is why I went to advocate for Melany, because the current provider that she had when I was still here in Oregon, I didn't feel was really listening. And so I really pushed for her to get transferred to a better hospital for cardiology. Yeah, and we put really
first doctor that we had when I got released from the hospital, Wendy, to your comment, he said, I don't have a lot of heart failure patients, but I'm happy to take you on, and left. And Laura said, oh no, we're going to find another doctor. I was just too tired, and I like every doctor. I get along with every provider. I thought, sure, we'll give him a shot. But she ended up finding the top doctor in the state for me that had just switched to Wisconsin from the Cleveland Clinic.
That's the best hospital.
Yeah, this man is phenomenal. And I actually approached him at my last appointment and said, on behalf of all heart failure patients, we'd really like an idiot's guide for heart failure. You can Google terminology and all kinds of information, but it would be so nice if somebody made a cheat or a hack, and a great resource where it's all transparent.
Mm-hmm. When I was first diagnosed, my cardiologist took out her medical book and read from it because she had never dealt with anyone with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So she literally said, well, it says you can die at any time of sudden death, so you shouldn't drive. You will never have children. So, and she's reading this and flipping the pages, and I'm just thinking, who am I seeing and why am I in her office?
Yeah, that's
Terrible.
Oh, it's terrible. Yep.
So Kelly, I think we probably either didn't answer the question or we gave so much more. So I hope you're happy with those answers.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Thank you. I'll check with, I don't know if Paul, the toddler won over Paul, but I'd like to see if Paul has something he'd like to share with us.
Hi. No, not I suppose right now. I just, was just really interested in joining. My wife knows you, Boba, because she writes for Health Union.
What's the name?
Lisa. She writes for Health Union.
Yeah.
And I heard about that you were doing this. I was just really interested in checking it out.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
I guess like the one of the questions I had was, and I had to go to the bathroom briefly, so I don't know if you answered it. I have two questions, I guess. First is like, when you say like the medical terms you just wish were like knowable or more easily referenceable in some kind of online hack, I guess I wonder like, what are those terms? Because like I might want to know what those are.
Yeah.
And then like I know there are a lot of like risk assessments out there for heart risk, and it's like because I just took one and I was like shocked to see that I'm like 5% chance of heart failure, and I'm like, oh God. But I'm like I don't know if anyone else has done that or if that should be scary or yeah.
Paul, how did you do the assessment? Was that online?
Yeah, it was like the Framingham test.
So
okay.
It's I mean, for me, the first thing is like really never be, don't be scared, always try to follow up on information. Obviously, this is great initiative, doing a self-check, but you have to remember you're not a doctor, right? So There might be a few things you missed in the nurses. And it's also a process. So it's usually not just one test. And usually I would probably, in our case, so the example I have, and I think it's Brigham here, and obviously I'm very biased, but they have like a college of doctors. They have like nine cardiologists, and that's just a cardiologist. And you have nurses that are even more fierce than the doctors. And so everything is kind of collegial, and then they share the notes, but they don't only ask about those numbers that you see. They look at your family history. Sometimes there might be genetic testing. I had to do that to establish that it was we knew it was congenital, but we didn't know what it was. And also right now, you have to establish a level of risk and understand where you are. And I see Wendy just shared one of their glossaries. So there are some out there, and then this is definitely one of my favorite resources with the shared registry. And therefore, I might be wrong with the definition, but the shared registry is essentially, is it 11 centers, Wendy, of genetic testing? You're muted.
There we go. We're up to 13 internationally.
Yeah. So maybe tell them a little bit about what the shared registry is.
Yeah, so it stands for the Sarcomeric Human Cardiomyopathy Registry. So it really focuses mostly on cardiomyopathy, on genetic cardiomyopathy. But it's 13 centers from around the country, around the world, excuse me, who have contributed their patient data. It's unnamed, so there's no, link. The name is not associated with the data at all, but it's both clinical and genetic data. And they've been able to then, by looking at these thousands upon thousands of records, they've been able to see and learn a lot more about cardiomyopathy. And I think they have right now, like they have 127 years worth of HCM patient data. So, that's like if you can study someone for 127 years. But because of the ages of the people in the registry too, they just have so many. So, yeah.
So
Paul, for me, the main terminology that confused me from the inception was just the name of the diagnosis. If they all unilaterally said heart failure, that'd be a great start. And then they could talk about the different permutations of it. But they all had different terminology and names for it. But then you get very familiar with the testing. Everyone knows ejection fraction and pro-BNP. You learn a lot in a very short period of time. But as far as screening, I would just ask my doctor for either an echo of the heart or a pro-BNP blood test. I don't think there's any other tool that they can use to diagnose it, and most screenings don't catch it. You have to stand up and advocate for yourself. I don't know about Wendy and Bub, but I felt my heart racing and really hard heartbeats and irregular rhythms for a long time. And I kept telling myself, you're doing it to yourself. It's in your head. Calm down. It's stress. And it wasn't. So listen to your body, speak up. And if you think that that's the case, get the blood test, get the echo of the heart. Better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah. So that's the same advice I would give. I think talking to a doctor that will do some of those tests, getting an echo and a few blood tests to just make sure that they look at the heart stuff and tracking it over time. Some of the things I did was like I would have a blood pressure cuff that I'll measure every now and then regularly, and just to see also what's going on in your life and stuff. So there's a lot of factors, but try to manage your life as much as you can in terms of diet, exercising, the blood pressure, controlling those, because those are things that either way will help you, and it give you high chances to deal with whatever comes at you, whether it's heart disease or something else. So we try to support that. But I think I'll check. I have my Walter and me audience. I'd like to see if you guys like to say one few more. But I wanted to share some fun pictures before I go. That we were shared, and then maybe Melany can tell us who's here in those pictures, and we can move on from there. And I just shared it from the way he gave it to me, and let me see if I can move it. Yeah,
I'm on the right side. That was a day out on the lake, and I'm not going to say anything about our political affiliation, but it was a fun, beautiful day with family. And Tim, my boyfriend and greatest in-house support, is wearing the red t-shirt. He's amazing and super cute.
See, it's a fun day. Let's see. There's one more. Oh, well, there's a few more, but this is the one. I guess this is right where they put in the AICD, right?
Yeah, I got the pacemaker July 1st and spent a month in recovery, and it went pretty well. I didn't have any complications. That was just normal bruising.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, more so for my case. When they found out that my condition was congenital, they decided to put the AICD in me, and it was putting on and I flip-flop on the decision on the operation because my wife was abroad. But I finally said, okay, let me go for it. And I put it in on Thursday night. I got out of the hospital on Friday. And then and on the Sunday, I had one episode. And if I hadn't gotten the AICD, that would have been it. Like, there would have been a VTAC. I was having VTAC, and that would have been fatal for sure. And that's the only incident I've had since. Like, that was four years ago. And some of those moments you don't know. But even the way we found out about the VTAC was that because I was on telemetry, and then they show something came abnormal on the system, and the nurse came. Is like, "Hey, did you see what happened? Did you feel anything?" I hadn't felt anything, but luckily I told him to give me the
Your life, and I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a lifesaver, and I'm glad that you have it, and it can really protect you and improve life. So I hope it's serving you well.
I'm happy. I love it. I'm not afraid of the scar or to talk about it. And I have that peace of mind and knowing if I get into that irregular rhythm, it's going to do its job.
It's great. I love it. So we have a more fun picture. It's like, this is when I hear Melany, this is the personal picture. I'm like, yeah, on a lot of your Facebook, social media, this is what I see. And who's in the picture here? Laura, do you recognize anybody?
This is my boyfriend, Tim, on the left, and his parents are standing behind him and they're protecting themselves from COVID. We actually did wear masks. We took them off for the picture.
Yeah.
Carmen that just jumped off the call is in the back with her Blackhawks jersey. Tim's daughter has the angel halo and her best friend. But we couldn't go out. We couldn't go to a Halloween party. So we just had family over for dinner and did caramel apples and did our best. Despite COVID, I still want to live and have fun and have some social contact. We take all the precautions, but it was a fun day.
Yeah, no, I think especially in times like now, we appreciate the condition a bit more. And who's the young man next to you? You're looking up to him.
That would be my son, and we went to a light festival over the weekend, and he doesn't like to smile and show affection with his mom on camera, but he loves me. He'll say he loves me twice a year, and I will drop everything I'm doing and look around the room, and if anyone's there, I'll say, "Did you hear it?" He said it out loud. Record this moment, but he's a great kid. He's been a good support and a big help and kind of filled the gap for running errands, shopping, picking up medication, helping with food prep and maintaining the house. He's an amazing human being. I'm proud of him.
Is your favorite son, I got it, right?
Yep, and only son.
No.
One and done.
And you fish also. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was this summer. I caught my first bass, and I don't care where you live on the lake. They heard me screaming. I was so excited. You drag in seaweed or weeds from the bottom 20 times, and you keep thinking, oh, it's just going to be seaweed, but it was actually a fish. I just couldn't contain myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's a lovely picture. Look at this.
So
what was happening here?
1 year anniversary with Tim after the diagnosis. And I grew up in high school in the 80s. I was in love with Molly Ringwald, and I love a movie called 16 Candles. I don't know if you've seen it, but in the end of the movie, they have this beautiful scene where they sit on a table and they share a cake together, blow out the candles. And my whole life, with all the men I've dated or been married to, I always wanted a man that would do that with me. So he was receptive to it, memorized the dialogue, and we sat there and did it that day. It's the best anniversary, and he gave me that gift, and I love him for it. But good day.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm taking notes. See, young fella here was.
This is one of my best friend's son. They just recently got married. And again, we took the face masks off for the picture. And what you can't tell is I'm literally holding my breath, thinking, take the picture fast because I don't want to breathe.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, but we improvise, and I think the risk is minimized as long as you make the effort. And this is the profile. No, this is not what. Yeah, this is you. What was happening that day? I guess that's your office look.
Well, I have an Instagram account that I set up called Heart Failure Group because I wanted to find like-minded people and interact with them. And in fact, that's how you and I met.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll just post pictures and have random comments, but I've never posted a picture with my reading glasses before. Yes, I am old if we haven't established that. So that's
Not
me
yet.
with glasses.
That will imply Laura also, so we have to see if Laura is happy with that or not. You already gave us the gap, so I'll assume, Laura is like, what, 25, and then, so.
Yeah, she's about 25 and I'm 90.
Melany got all the good genetics. She looks like the younger sister.
twins to the
Twins.
core. We laugh the same dorkiness. Yeah, twins.
It's beautiful. And this is one, a more recent one.
Yeah, that was Saturday at the light show.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Seems like Tim is a jackpot.
He really is. Did I mention he's cute?
I almost went with 2-color shoes. Go ahead for me.
Yeah, this was my favorite light display because they had these red and white lights on the ceiling that were twirling on the floor. It was magical. I'm still a child. I don't know if you guys can tell that, but some people grow up and they're adults and they take life seriously, but I feel like I'm 9, sometimes younger. But that would be a picture exemplifying my inner child's joy.
The child should never go. The child in you should always stay. But I'll let Laura be the judge.
Oh, I think that it comes from our dad, who he was struck by lightning 3 times and he was never afraid to die, and he really never took things seriously. He always had a joke and a smile. And
Melany gets struck with lightning 3 times.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, after that, I mean, you shouldn't be scared. After the first one, you're immortal. That's like Highlander. Like there was a series back in the day where they call it Highlander, but it was immortal. That's essentially what it is.
Yep, Highlander.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm trying to see how many more. Yeah, this definitely made me laugh because I was like, "Who's the nurse here?" Because this is amazing. What's happening?
That was cardiac rehab, and that was the day I graduated. And my favorite nurse. They're so amazing, inspirational, and empathetic. And I think people are nervous going into cardiac rehab because they expect that it's going to hurt. It doesn't. If anything, they tell you to slow down, be less physical.
Yeah.
But she was amazing. So the day I graduated, I said, "You're my superhero. I want to take a superhero pose with you." So we're doing our Wonder Woman pose.
Yeah.
And yeah, that next one is Laura. When she came in, that was the day we got out of the hospital, and my son and his girlfriend.
It's beautiful. You guys do look alike.
Yeah, she's my twin, just 5 years younger and cuter.
So cool. Let me see. Yeah, I think that was the last one. And thanks so much for sharing this with us. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we got to know a little bit more of you, and I'm sure we could have kept talking forever, but time is limited. Hopefully we'll do this again. I just really want to say thank you before I give you the last word. If anyone else would also like to add, let me know. But I really want to thank you for this conversation, and we're gonna package it and share it with the world and with yourself, and it will be available to you, of course, to also use it. But I just wanted to say, yeah, I'll probably stop talking now and give you the last word. And if Laura also like to say something, feel free.
I think we should all end it with a disco.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go, Laura.
I agree. If anybody that listens to this podcast walks away with one takeaway, I want them to know that it's heart disco and not heart failure. But thank you for finding your voice, for sharing your story. We all hope that you get that transplant eminently and go on to live a long, fruitful, healthy life. But I'm glad that I had a chance to share information. I hope people can take something away from it. And I thank you, Laura, Kelly, and Paul, and Wendy, and Carmen for joining us.
Thank you so much. Guys, this was wonderful. And to me, it means so much to me. And, when something like this happens, you worry about everything, success, life, mortality, all of that, legacy, meaning and purpose. And like I was talking to my wife the other day, we have no regret really. This gave us the chance to add so much meaning to our life. We're busier than before, but yeah, it's part of life, and we're happy to be in this position. But it's on moments like that makes it worthwhile, and we really appreciate it. Okay, there we go.
Thank you both so much
for
sharing. Hi.
Like the first one. Say hi.
Hi.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye. And also, after Christmas, I won't see you until my birthday.
Okay, so he's traveling for 6 months. He's going to the Caribbean, so he's gonna be living life. And they have in-person school, so he's excited for that. But I cannot go with him yet because we have to wait for the vaccine. But thank you so much, guys. I'll share this recording with you soon, and I'm really happy. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.